If you are hearing this program right now, there's a good chance you're listening via one of the many AM radio stations that airs this program and other programs like this. Many Bible-believing Christians rely on AM radio for spiritual growth as well as news and information that they can trust. Well, right now, Congress is considering the AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act. Why should you care? Well, here to answer that question is Troy Miller, President and CEO of National Religious Broadcasters and International Association of Christian Communicators, who together reach millions of viewers, listeners, and readers, and Washington Watch is a part of that. And National Religious Broadcasters receives no federal money. Troy, welcome to Washington Watch.
Tony, it's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I want to make a clear distinction. Nothing to do with PBS or NPR.
That's right. Nothing to do with PBS or NPR. I saw your last segment. That was great. They should level the playing field there.
They really should. I mean, today, where things stand, with internet access to create podcasts, I mean, there's so many platforms which we can communicate. PBS and NPR have kind of outlived their purpose.
Yeah, they really have, and they've really become very based, very biased in their programming. I think it was about 11, 12 years ago they came out with what they called a non-sectarian policy, which says, we're not going to do any religious programming. But what that really meant was we're not going to do any conservative Christian programming, but we'll do all kinds of other religious programming, and we'll do all kinds of programming that will debunk, Christianity, but we're not going to do
one-sided.
Yeah,
one-sided. Well, the fight to have the platforms will continue because we see an effort to eliminate AM radios out of vehicles, which is what percentage of Christian broadcasting is found on the AM dial?
Oh, I'd say right now probably a full 30 to 40% of Christian broadcasting is on the AM dial, but it's the number 2 genre on AM across the board. So the number 1 is conservative talk, and number 2 is Christian talk and teach. So it's a number 2 genre. Number 3 behind it is Spanish programming. So if you look at the nation, a lot of the rural communities, they depend on these AM stations, these AM broadcasters to get them the information and to get the localization for their communities. Lots of local pastors are carried on AM radio.
Because the bigger ones, the FM stations, are kind of become part of conglomerates.
That's right.
And so you don't get, and I know I've watched this. I started on FM radio 35 years ago, and those have now been gobbled up, and so local broadcasting is really becoming a thing of the past on FM.
On FM it is. A lot of national groups now, program those, and so you get a lot of the great national programming, national pastors, but that local programming, what's going on in those local communities is provided by AM.
Now, I'm not complaining because Washington watches on those FM stations as well, but AM has a place and it has a very key role. It's also a platform that's used during natural disasters and stuff. I know in Louisiana, going through hurricanes, when power is out, we still have the battery-operated AM radios.
Yeah, most people have still a lot of people, again, in these key areas. If you're in Tornado Alley, if you're in the Hurricane Pass, if you're in where there's a lot of fires, you have these AM, weather radios in your house, or that if you tune AM radio in, you're going to get a signal during these storms, and you're going to know what to do. The largest outlay of the infrastructure of the emergency broadcast system is all based in AM radio. And so there's not really a plan right now to say how that's going to move and where it's going to move to, because, Tony, as you know, one of the first things that goes down are all the cell towers, and the internet's gone.
Right. They're going to try to say, well, we use the cell tower emergency notification, which you get those pushes all the time, but that's only when it's working.
Yeah,
and it doesn't work during those storms. I can attest to that. No. So, Troy, tell us why. Why are AM radios coming out of cars?
So look, this first started to say as a, quote, technical issue that there was in the EVs and the electric vehicles, that there was an issue with the electric vehicles, the battery causing interference with the AM radio. And so they're saying, look, AM radio is outdated. It's not used anymore, even though some 40 million Americans still depend on AM radio as their primary source of information. So that was the first issue. That was really debunked even by the government accounting office that looked into it and said, look, the shielding either around the battery of the radio. We're talking a few dollars, to every car to do this. The real issue, Tony, is around what's called the connected dashboard. So all these cars today that are being developed, they all have these nice big screens in them, right? And what are on those screens? They're all internet connected. They're connected to these cell towers, and they come with subscriptions. So, if you buy a new General Motors car or a Ford car today, you can't even get the navigation system to work without buying a subscription. And Ford right now is in the battle with Apple over whether Apple CarPlay should be on there or not, because that limits or that opens up the option for them to have. So it's about who controls that connected dash. There's a lot of money to be made by the car manufacturers if they can sell these annual ongoing subscriptions to people who are riding in the cars. But that puts them then in the driver's seat of all of the programming. So it's the same thing we have on the internet, and the same thing with these big social media companies or the Apple Store or the Google Play Store. They can decide what apps get in, what apps don't get in. And we're saying, look, there's several issues here. First of all, the defranchise of free over-the-air information. Okay, that a lot of people, especially people, as you know, in poor communities, depend on this. And then there's just the access to that information in general. Who's going to decide?
Well, I mean, there's been a lot of concern over the years for the fairness doctrine. This is a backdoor to basically silencing conservative and Christian voices.
Absolutely, because you have to ask yourself, well, if as a car manufacturer, why just AM? Why are they starting? Why is it AM and not AM, FM? I think AM's just their dip into their toe into the pond here, stepping in. Radio in general is going to be in the car
because they can't make money off.
That's right. Can't make
so
it.
Now's the time to take the stand. What do people need to do to weigh in on this?
Call your congressman. There's a bill in both the House and the Senate, the AM in Every Vehicle Act. Call your congressman and tell him you want AM radio to stay on the air, and they need to sponsor and support this bill.
All right. Very good. Troy Miller, always great to see you. Thanks so much for stopping by.
Thanks, Tony, for having me.